Hi everyone, it's James here from the Studio Rats. I've been recording a new track this week, yes, the one you just heard in the intro. And it's sort of morphed into a guitar rock romp thing. And while I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever, in creating the rhythm guitar parts, I've come up with a tracking stroke mixing question that I feel needs answering. And that is, how should you record and then process stacked, or rather double tracked, or even triple tracked guitar parts? What is the ultimate combination of guitars, amps, and effects to give you a massive wall of sound type effect? How many parts should you stack up? And what parameters of the recording and playback chain should you mess with? Up to now, my normal process would be to record the first rhythm guitar part using guitar A, in this case my Schecter, and then record a second part on a different guitar, playing as close to the original part as I possibly can, and then process them through the same amp or effects chain. But what if you change more than one thing? Say the guitar and the amp, or the guitar and you just mess with some of the amp settings. Now, while messing about with loads of different amp, cab and effects pedals is a lot of fun, it's often not a very fast way to work and not very conducive to experimentation. However, I've just been sent the latest version of Overloud's THU guitar amp and effects software. THU version 2 is a complete from the ground up rebuild of THU. It's got a very easy to use drag and drop style user interface and comes fully loaded with a massive library of guitar amps, cabs and effects, which Overloud claim is the largest collection of amps, cabs and effects in a single plugin. And as you can see, there's plenty to choose from. The new design gives you everything you need to create world-class guitar tone in a single, easy-to-use package. Now, this is not a full review of THU version 2. However, I am going to be pulling in some of my favourite and now, quite frankly, go-to amp heads, cabs and microphones, and some fairly simple effects chains like some basic reverb, chorus and a bit of delay. The bulk of the tone is coming from stacking these parts and the effects rather than from one massively processed, hugely overprocessed track. Being a studio guy, I also like to add my studio style effects to the recorded parts rather than applying loads of different guitar effects in my guitar effects chain. That's just how I like to do it. I hope that makes sense. So let's start with the first rhythm guitar part that was recorded DI style into my DAW, in this case Pro Tools. The DI part sounds like this. Now I've applied the THU AAX version of the plugin in my track in Pro Tools, and I'm going to use one of the THU rock presets called 70s Heavy Rock, which is based around a high watt style amp. I've put a Tube Screamer style drive in front of the amp and changed the preset cab to a 4x12 green UK style. Always good to start with something you know. I've also got a compressor on the front end to give me a tighter front end into the drive. Now we're dialing in a rhythm guitar part here. It doesn't need to be a massive thick sound on its own, which is why I'm rolling out quite a bit of the low end. We don't need this part to clash with the lead guitar, which I'm guessing at this stage will need to be a fuller, thicker tone. Guitar 2 was recorded with my Gilmour-esque Strat. Let's first try this into the same effects amp and cab setup as the first part. Remember, the only thing we've changed here is the guitar, and I'll do my best to copy the part exactly-ish. Now let's take the Guitar 2 part and run it into a new amp. This time I've gone for a classic sounding Marshall type amp. Again, a bit of compression on the front end into a 2x12 British State cab. Let's dial this in and add it to the first rhythm track and pan them hard left and right. So which do you prefer? Different guitar into the same amp or different guitar into different amp? I promise I'm not judging. For me, I think I like the added variation of the second style of amp. It sounds more like two different players on a stage rather than a double-tracked studio part. Let's add two more parts into the soup, giving us 2 rhythm tracks per side. Quad guitars, anyone? This time it's the same guitars, first the Schecter and then the Gilmour Strat, panned the same way as their counterparts. And we'll play this back with the same amps and then spice it up a bit with some different amp and cab combinations. Some more of the stuff I've found that I really like from THU version 2. Okay, now I know that's not every possible combination of these 4 parts, but I think you can see, or rather hear, that your ear has a lot to choose from. For me, I like the variation that changing both the guitar and, let's call it, the full rig has. I'm not so fussed about stacking up more than 2 guitar parts. The parts start to sound loose and lose their definition and kind of get fuzzy. Or that could just be my dodgy playing. No comments, please. The chorus section features some picked arpeggio parts played on 2 different Telecasters. Naked, they sound like this. And now with THU version 2, they sound like this. The SLO-88 Clean and the Brunetti sound great for these parts, and where the Brunetti has a delay for its modulation, the SLO-88 has a touch of chorus and phase, which sounds great. It's worth saying none of these effects are being heard in stereo, as the parts are being panned hard left and hard right to create a kind of stereo effect between them. This is old school tracking effects and not processed. I've also recorded a central, properly stereo part, if you like, with some high bar chords and applied a tremolo and shimmer verb effect to a Fender Bassman style amp. I love the tone, I'm just not quite sold on the part yet, not sure if it's right. Finally, the lead guitar tone is again based on the SLO-88, which I really like, but this time I'm using the lead model with a TS style pedal in the front end to tighten it up and a tape delay and room reverb before a 4x12 cabinet to help the melody and the solo sit nicely in the track. Now, there are over 80 guitar amp models and over 50 different cabinets and hundreds of effects in THU version 2. But there are also some fantastic sounding bass amp models in THU. And yes, you've been listening to one of those in this track. This is the Supertube VR, which I think is probably based on a kind of Ampeg style head. And I've paired it with a 4x10 bass cab and a studio style Vari compressor, which I think sounds great. I would say there is something for every guitar player inside THU version 2. But what if you don't see or hear an amp model or cab you really like? Well, let's start with amps. While sadly, we mere mortal guitar players are not able to capture our own amps, there is the Rig Player module, which allows official THU collaborators to create amp captures of their favourite amps, which you can buy as an additional purchase. The supplied amp captures sound great, and there are hundreds more available from the Overloud website. If you're just not feeling the cab tone or sound, you can of course load in a third-party impulse response via the Super Cabinet. Like all of the THU modules, there are enough parameters there to satisfy even the most tweak-hungry guitarist or mix engineer. So what have I learned from these tests? Well, firstly, I think I prefer changing the amp over changing the guitar when building up multi-track parts. 2, I think for the sort of music I like to play and work on, double tracking is enough. I don't need quad track guitars to get a sound that I really like. And 3, the new Overloud THU version 2 sounds really great. There's a ton of stuff built in to get you well and truly up and running, and if you want to broaden your guitar palette even wider, there are plenty of expansion packs to appease every flavour of tone hound. What's not to love? So I really hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do like, subscribe, hit the bell, all the normal stuff. I'll leave links to the Overloud pages down there in the notes. And if you do like what you see and hear, please do use the link down there in the description when buying the THU version 2 or any of the upgrades, as it really does help the channel just a little bit. But for now, my name's James Ivey from the Studio Rats, and I'll see you again very soon.